Hi. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit that something in your life is already over. A dream, a pattern, a strategy, a structure that is no longer aligned with who you are now. And this full moon in Capricorn feels like a time where we're being asked to meet that reality and to fully cooperate with it. A lot of times we may be almost addicted to fixing things because we know we can. Maybe we're disappointed, we feel rejected, and we want to find a different way. And Capricorn is a sign of hard work, so it's willing to work for what it wants. But this full moon is also squaring Saturn and Neptune, and it feels like it's reached a limit in your life. How will you respond to that? Because it seems like you're trying to fix something that is asking for a sense of surrender instead. Capricorn is not a sign that I normally associate with surrender, but Neptune is. And with this T-square, there is some pressure here. It feels very emotional, difficult, solemn even, for you to admit that this thing just isn't working anymore. Full moons are a time of release, very similar to Neptunian energy, which is about surrender and letting go. Full moons are culmination, but because of the condition of this moon and the surrounding transits, it feels like there might be an underlying dissatisfaction with this culmination. Something may have come to fruition over the last 6 months, but maybe there's some disappointment there, or it didn't pan out exactly how you wanted it to. I always recommend going back and listening to videos from the new moon in Capricorn. I have one, and I named it "You're Being Limited for a Reason." And as we'll talk about throughout this video, that lunation and this lunation have something in common, and that is the idea of restraint, of not doing things just because you know you can, of saying, no, I will not spend my energy here any longer. This full moon in Capricorn is happening on June 29th at 8 degrees of Capricorn. So wherever you have 8 degrees of Capricorn, it's going to be affecting that and the themes of that house. It's also going to be affecting anybody who has placements at 8 degrees, really like 6 to 10 degrees of cardinal signs. So Capricorn, Cancer, Aries, Libra are going to be really strongly affected by this. Capricorn and Saturn add a sense of weight and duration to our lives. And as we're going to discuss today, there is a sense of spirituality coming through here from the Sabian symbol, from the astrology, from the human design, even. And you know what I find really interesting about Capricorn is that we naturally associate Capricorn with the material realm, and that's not incorrect, but there's a sense of spirituality that I think we often miss in Capricorn. And actually, some of the gates in human design, in human design, we split up the sky into 64 gates. There are Capricornian gates that are actually quite spiritual. In my last video about Jupiter in Leo, I talked about the symbol of Saturn and how it shows a certain subservience to nature. And this is very true. And that's why I find that the spirituality of Capricorn is very earthy. Sometimes, because of the nature of Saturn, especially when the moon is here, it can feel depressed. It can feel solemn. It can feel quite difficult to be with our emotions. We might push them away, but also because the sun is in Cancer, we might also feel like we're drowning in our emotions. And so when we're in this push and pull energy, it feels very difficult to make a grounded decision about whatever's coming through that's asking for your surrender, right? We can vacillate between repressing and kind of moving away from feeling anything around it and focusing on the external achievement with the moon in Capricorn, or we can feel like we're drowning in the emotions with the sun, Mercury, and Jupiter in its final day of Cancer. And so the invitation here is to, as often, to integrate these opposites. And this will require some restraint, sitting in the emotional world without getting dragged by it. Because Mercury is in its pre-shadow retrograde, we're going to talk a little bit more about Mercury retrograde later, but because of that, there's a sense that we don't have all of the information yet that we need. And so maybe that's another reason why you're feeling limited, or you're feeling like you need more information to make a decision to let this go. Like something's missing, and something is probably missing. There is probably some information that you are missing, not just because Mercury's retrograde, but because Mercury is in Cancer, right? And so we've kind of steeped this, the mercurial energy in emotions. And it's hard to think logically and discern and get the details when Mercury is here. Now, we do have a Mercury Cazimi on July 12th, which will be a time where maybe we'll find some information that's necessary. But until then, we're kind of in the dark here. So even though full moons are a time of illumination, you may be illuminated to something, but have this feeling like, I don't have the full picture. So how can I surrender? You know, it's funny. I think the number one thing that all of us as humans struggle with is truly uncertainty. And the whole world is uncertain. And our purpose in this life becomes to really learn how to sit in uncertainty without losing ourselves, without abandoning ourselves. Things feel really foggy right now, I think, for a lot of people. Personally, collectively, if you're in the astrology world, you may have heard that July is going to be insane. It's going to be a little crazy, you know? And as the world gets crazier, there's an invitation for us to find solace and safety in the one thing in the world that we actually have some control over, which is our relationship to ourselves, our relationship to the world. But it begins with our relationship with ourselves. Whatever you're carrying, it may feel heavy right now. And once again, there's an invitation to put it down and trust something bigger to fix it for you. You don't have to always do this on your own. Moon in Capricorn can feel incredibly lonely in that way, that it's always supporting other people. No one is supporting the Moon in Capricorn person, right? So the invitation is there. Can you put this down? And I think the biggest thing, honestly, that's actually coming through right now beyond the emotions as to why we may have a difficult time putting down whatever this is. You know, this is an earth sign, so it may have something to do with the material realm. It really depends on where this is happening in your chart, but it may be money, it may be work, it may be your material life, it may be relationships. And also, it may be patterns and structures and versions of yourself within those things that are ending. So it's not always about the actual thing ending, but maybe the pattern is ending. But what could be getting in the way of you releasing this outside of, I just got the Three of Swords. This is disappointment. I'm feeling like there's something truly that feels like it didn't pan out the way that you wanted, and that sucks, you know? And it's like, how can we accept that current reality without suppressing our emotions, but also without drowning in them? That becomes really the task of our lives in so many ways, right? As we learn to sit in uncertainty. But I think another thing that could be coming through, other than feeling a lot of emotions, is our sense of pride and ego. Saturn, the ruler of Capricorn, did I even mention that? Yeah, well, Saturn is the ruler of Capricorn. And if you've been here, you know, we love Saturn around here. Saturn and the sun are enemies. And Saturn is a very humble planet, right? Especially in Vedic astrology, it's the sign of like the common man, and the sun is the king. So there can be this weird thing with Sun and Saturn. And if you think about, the Sun and Saturn, or I'm sorry, the signs that are ruled by them, especially Capricorn and Leo, they're in this aversion to each other, right? They're quincunx each other. They don't really see what the other person is doing and why they're doing it. Doesn't quite make sense. There's a lot of adjustments that need to be made. And so what can happen here is like there could be a sense of pride in how much work you've put in, or because the Capricorn is very goal oriented. So maybe this is a goal that you set for yourself and it just didn't go the way you wanted. You're not getting the outcome that you wanted. And so there's this impetus to keep fighting for it, to keep building on it. But something is structurally weak because remember, Saturn, the ruler of the moon, which is debilitated, is also debilitated. It's in its fall in Aries. So there's something structurally weak here in whatever you're trying to move forward with. It's almost like you're trying to like build on something that has really weak foundations. And so this full moon and leading up to it might even be a time where something gets shaken in that foundation. You see it clearly. You see that something isn't going to work. You see that you may not have all the information on what's going to happen next, right? Because you got to surrender to the outcome of that. But you're realizing, it's a realization, this isn't working. I got to do something different. Don't let your ego, don't let your pride get in the way of this. You might have to surrender a sense of ego and pride in order to move forward and actually grow spiritually. This Sabian symbol at 9 degrees is an angel carrying a harp, and it's very much about spiritual attunement. And James Burgess says about this that worldly success comes from spiritual attunement. And also in my Sabian symbols book, which I have in my book list, this is what they say as well. A sympathetic attunement to spiritual source. This symbol speaks to the cosmic symphony behind all manifestation and to the fact that truly inspired individual recognizes no limitations. On a practical level, this image alludes to divine protection. This is what I'm saying. This isn't Capricorn, and we don't talk about how spiritual this energy can be. It tends to be very earth-based. And a lot of Capricorn people can be spiritual in their conquest towards worldly success, external achievements. I want to read, though, from this book, which is Memories, Dreams, and Reflections, which is Carl Jung's autobiography. There were some other people who contributed because I believe he died before it came out. But he says, I have frequently seen people become neurotic when they content themselves with inadequate or wrong answers to the questions of life. They seek position, marriage, reputation, outward success, or money, and remain unhappy and neurotic even when they have attained what they were seeking. Such people are usually confined within too narrow a spiritual horizon. Their life has not sufficient content, sufficient meaning. If they are enabled to develop into more spacious personalities, the neurosis generally disappears. Carl Jung's definition of neurosis was really somebody who had an unintegrated conscious and unconscious. So there was kind of like an erratic behavior to the self. So it's not neurotic. We hear that word nowadays in modern psychology and we think, oh, they're insane. And it may look like that, but he talks about how a lot of actually very highly successful people were very neurotic. And so this is why I really, in my work with Jungian psychology. I'm actually right now redoing my most popular workshop, which is Mapping the Shadows. And I'm going to have that out soon for you guys. So make sure you are subscribed, make sure you have the notification bell. And for best measure, be on my Substack and be on my newsletter, because that is how you'll know that you'll actually get information from me directly, since I don't have control over the algorithm, right? And I always wonder, like, how many people, because I know I forget who I've subscribed to. And then I one day see a video and I'm like, oh my God, I totally missed this person. So being on Substack, being on my newsletter will really strengthen that connection that we have together. But I'm redoing it and making it deeper, and I'm making it into a course, and it's going to be coming out soon. And I'm really excited because My addition of Jungian psychology is so that I can facilitate more transformation in people. And this is why I often talk about integrating oppositions within the birth chart, because this is really based on Carl Jung's work of integrating the unconscious and the conscious, which is one of the modules of astrology and mapping the shadows through astrology in the course. So I'm excited to share with you guys. But this is really what we see as neurosis, is a difficulty with having this sense of peace in our lives because we are being pulled by both ends and not learning how to stay in the tension long enough, stay with the opposing sides without going to either end. I want to talk a little bit about this human design as well. So in human design, this full moon is happening in gate 58, which is a gate of aliveness. The gene key goes from dissatisfaction as the shadow, the search, being a seeker, and the gift is vitality, moving into joy of service. When we are in the shadow of this energy, we feel that something is missing. We're never quite satisfied. It's like this chronic dissatisfaction in life. And this is what I'm seeing here. It's like, it just feels like everything, it feels like crap. Like everything, like nothing feels great. But when we're in the gift here, it's a joyful engagement with the world and living authentically, because we find joy in the process, joy of service. We do things from a space of love, not expectations. You know, I just got back from my 2-week meditation retreat. And before that, I was traveling. I went out of town for my birthday, came home the next day, flew to Massachusetts, did the 2-week retreat, came back. 3 days later, flew to Washington, and I just got back from Washington. So it's been so much stimulation after a 2-week silent meditation retreat in the woods. However, yeah, I just got this Page of Pentacles. That's interesting. That was actually my card for this week. I do a personal tarot reading for myself every week for the last 6 years. I just got back from all this traveling though, and it's been really interesting working and like speaking and like having my mind be stimulated in these ways, because over the past few years since I found Vipassana, which by the way, the Pali word Vipassana, it's a type of meditation, literally means clear seeing or clear perception. And when I engage in this meditation, especially when I do the silent meditation retreats and it's for a long period of time, I become more and more interested in the direct experience of life rather than the conceptual mind, which is really difficult because a lot of what I do here is working within the conceptual realm, the ideological realm, right? So this is Saturn, this is Capricorn, this is Mars. Oh, we didn't even talk about Mars squaring Uranus. I think that's really adding to the dissatisfaction though, because there's this restlessness, this desire to fix everything, but also feeling like you're powerless to fix it all. And yeah, I'm struggling to even talk about like these ideas and concepts, and it's a very interesting ride. So there might be something like this, like something that you have found structure in is now being shaken up. And I think the first thing that we want to do, because we desire certainty, is to say, okay, well, what does this mean? Does this mean Jazz is going to stop talking about astrology and human design? Does this mean that now I got to break up with my partner? Does this mean I got to leave my job? And once again, it comes back to like, how can we sit in the uncertainty without repressing the emotions, Cancer, and not making it have to mean anything yet, because we don't have all of the answers. We don't have all the information yet. This pressure to fix it, this pressure to perfect a certain condition in your life, we're being asked to either let it go or really deeply fall in love with the process. Saturn is painful. Saturn is limitations. That's how we find alignment with Saturn. He says, this isn't working. And when will you stop negotiating with your reality? It's not working. And so there's a little bit of like masochism that can come through here, you know. I I love Saturn, and I will admit there are some masochistic tendencies in my life as well. And that's important to know. This is why the shadow work is really important. Because when you don't accept and know about yourself, yeah, I kind of like some struggle, I like some pain, it manifests in unconscious ways. And so, what if a lot of what's happening right now, not to blame yourself, right? I think this energy is actually asking for a lot of compassion for yourself. And what if there is a responsibility for yourself to see where you might be unconsciously bringing these situations in your life in order to really integrate some oppositional energies? This is why it's so funny. I wanted to do the mapping the shadows later, but it just feels like this is the time that it needs to come out. When Mercury goes retrograde, which is going retrograde on the 29th in Cancer, it naturally gets attuned to the unconscious, right? This is when Mercury, Hermes, visits Hades, visits Pluto in the underworld. Beautiful time to be doing shadow work, to be seeking the unconscious, because you'll note that material world things with Mercury retrograde aren't going as planned, right? And so it's asking us to attune to something deeper beneath the surface. One of the things about gate 58 is also about attuning to your natural rhythm. And I think this is huge because Saturn in Aries, the ruler of this moon, is really about finding a natural pace for yourself. But because it's in its fall, it's not going to happen easily. You're going to be hit with restrictions and limitations until you recognize, I got to go with my own rhythm. This sense of worldly success, this sense of, I need to be here, but I'm not there. I'm here. I don't want to be here. I want to be there. I don't want this to happen. I want that. It places a level of stress. It's an internal disturbance, right? This gate 58 is in the root center. The root center is a pressure center, and it's the pressure to act. It's like, I got to fix this. Okay, what am I going to do here? You know, even the past few days sitting in meditation, it's been so hard for me because I feel so restless, right? This is Mars applying a conjunction to Uranus and squaring the nodes. This is a lot of mutability, really having you sit with restlessness and instability. Mars is not happy in Gemini already. It doesn't feel stable. And then you add that applying aspect to Uranus and the square to the nodes. Yeah, this is why the somatic invitation is really constraint and really more like restraint, not running to fix everything. The way I work with this somatically is when I'm in meditation, I get all sorts of desires. Oh, let me just check. Okay, just like, let me do that. Even, let me just scratch that itch rather than staying with this sensation. I had some crazy experiences at my meditation retreat, you guys. I wrote an email to my newsletter list and talked about like 3%. But I had some crazy realizations. I think they just need to like time to like simmer. Cause so much of it is ineffable. Like there's no words for it. I don't know how to describe it. I don't know what it means. I don't know how to, bring it into my teachings. Yeah, it really feels like the question right now is not how can I fix this, but how can I remain strong and confident in my own power despite surrendering to the circumstance? So let's pull just a tarot card to finish us off here. Yeah, I wrote here, not everything gets to have your attention. I think that's one of the most beautiful things about spending a lot of time in meditation is you recognize how important the present moment is and how precious your energy is. And as a projector in human design myself, that to experience that, because it's one thing to like learn that and to have moments of experiencing, but experiencing it again and again and again in meditation repeatedly was really transformational for me. Saturn is about boundaries after all. And right now, the boundary for you is it might be a lack of involvement, not because you don't care. because you do. Yeah. All right. Let's just pick one advice card. Yeah. Ace of Cups. There is an invitation to have a fresh perspective, to invite fresh emotions, inject new emotions, maybe of joy and vitality, gate 58, into this situation, having a joyful engagement with the world, even when you are not satisfied on the material level, is the transformation. When I was at my retreat, I wanted to take a picture of this, but I didn't get a chance to because I had to leave pretty soon after the retreat ended. And it was this beautiful quote, and you're not supposed to read on retreat, but oopsies. I would read it every time I passed it, and it said, try not to expect anything. In this way, the whole world opens up to you. And it was just such a beautiful reminder when I would pass by this, that our expectations really keep us in suffering. Capricorn can have very, very high expectations. And really, it's the expectation to the outcome that is what creates a lot of suffering. And so, can you release that and move towards this joyful engagement? Because what we find with gate 58 is the gate of aliveness, is that when we step into this radical authenticity, rather than constantly trying to fix everything to get away from a chronic dissatisfaction that never really gets fixed, we find our true purpose in the world beyond the material realm is what really leads to satisfaction. And from that space, we don't have to renounce the material world. We just enter into a new relationship with it. And that makes all the difference. Thanks so much for being here. As a reminder, I will be relaunching Mapping the Shadows. Such a great time to do it right before Mercury retrograde. I'm relaunching. And I'm excited to see how this is going to help people. There's going to be a bunch of changes and some perks for people who want to sign up. But honestly, the biggest perk is that you get to take a deep look at what might be holding you back that you are not seeing clearly. That may be the disappointment, the rejection, the delay, the mistakes, the endings that are coming up in your life right now are here to help you actually move into greater psychic wholeness. And that shift in perception can change everything. I'll see you next time.